Earthlings, welcome to a rather special show, or at least an impromptu show. It wasn't planned until about 2.5 hours ago. So what it was really is, as you can see, I've got Andy and Graham here. So welcome along, guys. And we've been kind of really having a chat about the ramifications, fallout, the prospects and all that from the Grand National stuff. And so we thought, well, we might as well sling it up online. That's what we do nowadays. Good for the algorithms. So we've got a few people in the house already. That's really good. So Paul Hatherley, hello there. We've got Sophia, don't know who that is. Canadian Vegan Forever, the Vegan Potterhead, and Paul Campbell. Greetings from Galway. So I think you know Paul, don't you, Graham? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So greetings back from Dublin and wherever Graham is. It's a secret location, I believe.
County Meath.
Yeah, so basically we're kind of talking about welfare and rights and the overarching problem that is still ongoing in the movement, which is that the rights-based people find it very difficult to kind of find a space within the animal rights movement, which sounds a bit weird and always has. And so I've often used phrases like rights-based animal rights, which is a bit wordy, and yet it's necessary in order to differentiate it from standard rhetorical animal rights, which doesn't take into account any of the philosophy. And the sad part of the animal rights movement is that most of us in it don't agree with animal rights in a philosophical sense. Everybody in it seems to like the name, though. And so this is what's caused a lot of the problems. And it's caused a lot of problems for a long time. And it came to a head really in the late 1980s when Gary Francione and Tom Reagan were working together. And then by the time we get to the mid 1990s, the kind of animal rights part of the animal rights movement was squashed and invisibilized, which again always sounds really weird. I mean, when you say it, just say it. It sounds weird, doesn't it? You know, that the most people in the animal rights movement, it's almost like you would say most people in the human rights movement don't believe in human rights. And you just think, hang on, how does that work, right? Just doesn't make any sense. But that unfortunately is what it is. And so we were thinking it'd be interesting to use as a kind of as a case study the animal rising thing. So this is animal rising used to be animal rebellion, and I think it was about. What do you think? It was about a week ago when
I think it was last Monday, as in a week tomorrow. They made their announcement, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And then the first thing that they did was they went in for this Grand National thing. And I imagine everybody that's tuning in has probably seen at least some of the fallout or the press coverage and all that of the Grand National. So they rebranded themselves. Not totally sure whether there was a big split between them and Extinction Rebellion. You know, that's still to come. And then the first thing they announced is the Grand National thing. And that raised the first question for me, which was, they've framed the Grand National thing on being animal lovers. That is the main claims of this particular campaign, that we're a nation of animal lovers, that they're animal lovers, and that they want other animal lovers to join them and everything. I'm not quite sure if they're going to do that for all their campaigns. I'll be disappointed if they...
In the spiel that was released last Monday announcing the name change, it said they was focusing on animal and nature lovers. So I would imagine it's kind of part of the MO, yeah.
Okay.
That was in their announcement with the name change, that they were going to basically focus their attention on animal and nature lovers.
All right. Okay. Well, you see, I half suspected that it could be that the Grand National thing was kind of bad timing for them, in the sense that the
one thing we need to take into consideration as well, that kind of expose or whatever it was that the journalists got hold of, is it the Mail on Sunday? that kind of made out that, you know, that they'd stop this or whatever. Well, the whole point of that is they were announcing animal rebellion were obviously going to cause this stuff. So they had to, I don't know whether that forced the early announcement because obviously they were arranging things and they changed the name or what. But that expose, when it actually first came out, called Animal Rebellion, the group that was going to disrupt the Grand National.
I wanted to be a fly on...
They kind of had to address it somehow. Yeah, they couldn't.
Yeah, I wanted to be a fly on their wall when they were coming up with a new name because they obviously wanted to keep the R right, and so they had to. So it went from Animal Rebellion to Animal Rising, because a lot of people have said, "Well, why didn't they just keep it? You know, rebellion is better than rising and stuff." And so don't know what else. Animal radicalism, and they must have gone through the dictionary, all the R's, you know.
Yeah.
So
because so much of their branding already, you see, and so many people know them as AR that you know, it seems it makes sense.
So they're bound to want to, it makes sense. See, I was going under the potential that the Grand National thing was bad timing for them. And I was thinking that maybe they were, because it was the Grand National and horse lovers and all that kind of stuff, that's why they really ramped up this claims making about animal lovers. But you're kind of saying that it looks like it's a bit more generic than that.
I mean, I'm only going by what they used last week to announce the name change and the refocus and that. But it certainly ended on the note that was going to be the focus, animal and nature lovers.
Yeah. And well, the branding hasn't shifted far from their roots. Extinction Rebellion was originally formed as or out of rising up. Okay, so that word has been, as it were, prominent in there. So that's kind of interesting.
So that could be a reconnection with that roots, I suppose, and that's why they've picked like half and half.
Yeah. So Graham, where have you mainly seen this animal lover claims going on?
On Facebook, really. I think it was Kev had commented upon the post when they had done their release of their new name. Kind of funny little story. I thought they were saying it was Animal Rights Inc. instead of Rising, and got excited for about 20 seconds until I reheard it. But yeah, it was their Facebook reveal, and then I seen it today on News Talk. There was an article written up about it, and the comments where they kind of got misconstrued.
Yeah, we've got them lined up to show them. We might be able to show. Yeah, we won't be able to show them in a while. So what we're going to do now is switch from this PowerPoint to I've got 3 little clips, audio clips and video clips, which kind of old video clips, which kind of show kind of what's going on in terms of the way that they're framing it. The first one worries me in the sense that this is Claudia, who seems to be one of their main spokespersons. And she's talking about animal lovers and she's talking about the treatment of other animals, but it's all being associated with the name animal rights. And so, you know, this is perpetuating what we would see as the problem for it, really, is the fact that there's not much clarity about what animal rights means. And there's a lot of what we would probably regard as welfare claims making, which has been branded as animal rights, and that's not helpful from the point of view of an animal rightist. I mean, we're bound to be concerned when something that is not rights is being presented as animal rights, but this has been going on for years, unfortunately. So let's just have a quick look at the first one of these.
You've said that you want to disrupt the Grand National at Aintree later on today. So tell us what your plan is. What is it that you're trying to do?
Well, the reason we're here today is first and foremost for these horses. We are a group of animal lovers, as I'm sure most people are here today. But unfortunately, with events like the Grand National and when we exploit animals in general for food, for entertainment, we are putting them directly in harm's way. So we are here today to prevent this from happening. This is also part of a much bigger campaign that is happening this summer, not just centered around horse racing, but so that we can have this really important national conversation about our treatment of animals.
Right, so that's interesting to me because, well, I always cringe when somebody said animal lover. I've got to admit, I do when that comes up. But she also said exploitation. She also said harm, right? And so they've obviously had a meeting to kind of clarify their claims making. So it seems to be in that kind of area because they're even saying freedom for everyone. So there's some quite strong claims, and then you've got the animal lover bit and the the treatment thing rather than the use thing.
Yeah.
So it's a mix and match, isn't it?
Well, their response to Kev, because he more or less asked them outright whether what their kind of motives were going forward, and they maintained that they were an abolition movement. However, I mean, I suppose the argument is, were Animal Rebellion ever an abolition movement to continue being one?
Yeah, another issue, of course, is the fact that they were always reluctant to focus on veganism as Animal Rebellion. So is Animal Rising going to be any different from that? Because they
Can't answer that one. Not sure.
Yeah,
it wasn't mentioned in their write-up, but I suppose.
No, I mean, I've not seen veganism used by them, I don't think.
No, I got emails from them once I signed a petition, and never once mentioned animal rights or veganism really in their messages.
Signing petitions, Graham, you radical you.
Extremely signing petitions.
Okay. So the next clip is Alex, Alex Lockwood, and he does pretty good, except there's a lot of talk about animal lovers again, so he's kind of on message, I suppose.
Alex Lockwood is from Animal Rising, joins us in the studio. Alex, what exactly is going to happen this weekend?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us on. I think we're in this country, we're rightly proud of being animal lovers. We want to go there and stop the harm. What we're asking people to do is come and join us at 9:30, from 9:30 in the morning outside the gates.
Are you going to try and stop the most famous race in the world? Is that your plan?
One horse dies every 2 or 3 days in racing in the UK. 50% of the horses who end up in UK slaughterhouses have racing passports. It does harm the animals, and we're against that. So yes, we will try to disrupt the race.
But these horses are bred for racing. So if they weren't bred for racing, then the argument is they wouldn't be born at all. Surely it's better to be bred for horse racing and to be cared for as they are than not being born at all.
Yeah, I mean, that is the definition of breeding, forcing animals into life for profit. It's very similar to the food system. One of the real tragedies, isn't it, that people who do love horses and love the racing, the only way to actually get close to these wonderful creatures is to actually have them bred for profit.
Yeah, so that frustrated me, to be honest, because he answered that breeding question really well, right? And then went back to loving horses and stuff, which I thought was quite interesting. Hi, Kev. If you want to come on, let us know, and we'll give you a link. Yeah, so that was another kind of interesting way. But again, the main claims making was animal lovers and stopping harm. But again, the food system. So they all seem to have this kind of recipe that they're going to mention this, that, and the other, but they've got to get food in there, and they've got to get harm in there, and they've got to get treatment in there. And so that to me can, as it were, be improved on. But it's not as though, I mean, there's, it's not a question of picking on them, because everybody in the animal movement does this. Absolutely. So the next clip is a really funny one that I don't know whether people have seen this. Is basically the journalists have completely fecked up here, and that they've got a horse consultant on who they think is going to be on the side of the national, and it turns out that he's not. But there's something else very important from a movement point of view before that. So I'm gonna pause this one a couple of times if I can.
The Grand National's coming up.
Excellent.
And some organisation called Animal Rising says they want to disrupt it. Joining us from Animal Rising is their spokesperson, Ben Newman, as well as horse consultant, Dean Stansel. Now, Ben, first to you. Come on, this is one of the great sporting events in British cultural life. How are you going to disrupt it, and why are you going to disrupt it?
Yes, so horse racing is wrong, and we can do so much better than using animals for fun or food.
Dean Stansel, Ben.
Yeah, so that was pretty good. He was only allowed to have a sentence. Now, this is interesting now, is what the journalist does. Listen to what the journalist says.
Dean Stansel, Ben says horse racing is wrong and cruel. Is he right?
Now, he didn't say that, right? Yep. So this is the problem, that you've got the journalists who because of years and years of us talking about cruelty and stuff, they just naturally think that that's the language that we're going to use. So this is always going to be a problem, even for a rights-based person to go on the media and they go, "Oh, it's all about cruelty, isn't it?" And you go, "No, you've got to kind of do a lot of correction work, you know." It's the same as like you've got to do some correction work when you're talking about veganism, because they'll assume it's a diet, you know, about cruelty, and so you got some work to do. So kind of journalists are a problem as well, because journalists just tend to go back through their own stories that they've written, or all the stories that have been written by their own station or newspaper, for example, and then they'll pick out the words, all the keywords will come up, and it's going to be cruelty, right? So this is the problem, you know. It's difficult. I don't know. I mean, it might be more difficult. When I was a press officer, we used to get pretty good relationships with individual journalists. I don't know whether that's possible now in the internet age, where you go back to the same person over and over. And because you've got that relationship, you're able to go back to them and say, "Oh, you know, the last time we talked about, you know, you said that our position was, you know, can I just point out this, you know?" And so you kind of, as it were, train them a little bit. Whereas obviously this guy just thinks that animal rights is about cruelty. It's, you know, even to the extent as the guy that is interviewing doesn't even mention it, and he brings it up as though he did mention it. He said the words were, Ben says that it's wrong and cruel. He didn't even say that, you know. Just to show. And then this is the funny bit now, folks.
Right.
It is, Ben. I agree totally with Ben. 59 horses have been killed at the Grand National meeting since the year 2000. That's 59 horses' lives lost.
You at Animal Rising have said that.
Ooh, so that's generally funny in the sense that, right, is that I mean, the guy, when he starts talking, you can see him looking sideways, and then he starts doing this because obviously somebody's yelling into his ear, right? And so there must be some researcher somewhere on that news outlet who's getting right bollocking, because they were supposed to bring on somebody supportive, you know. So that went completely wrong for them, didn't it? You know, it's quite funny, really.
It'll be interesting though, like humor aside, whether anyone watched that in real time or afterwards as a non-vegan and actually took, because they love the appeal to authority, right? So Ben would have not even said what the journalist claimed he said, and they'd dismissed that instantly because Ben's a vegan, right? But the other guy, well, he's obviously an expert. So would that have actually made any difference to the non-vegans that would have heard this guy completely corroborate, so to speak? It'd be nice to know.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And another one would be is if Ben got back on, and I don't know whether he did, because that's the only bit of the interview that's been released as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, kind of thing. Would he have corrected the guy on the cruelty? Yeah. That's what we would need to happen. You know, if we were to establish animal rights as an idea that is fixed, you know, ripening up in Donald Watson's terms, we would need to correct the mistakes that they make, obviously very politely, you know, but that kind of correction work kind of needs to be done. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, Ben said about 8 words, and he still couldn't repeat them correctly.
Yeah, I know, because that's what I'm saying.
It's a bit frustrating. Yeah, so it would be nice even if he did get an opportunity, just as if, I mean, even if it was just on camera without speaking, to just go like, what more can I do than what I did? Like, you might as well have just not had me on. You might as well have just said, look, like, I'm just going to make up some guy and pretend that that's what they said. I mean, you'd think that if someone was going to have a go at him in his ear, it'd be like, hang on, the guy just spoke and you've just literally changed everything he said. That would be the message, not the expert we got in doesn't agree with your crap. What do we do?
Yeah, that's right. So Kev says he wants to come on. So how do I get the link to him? Because I'm on my computer here, so I can't do WhatsApp.
I can send it to him on Facebook.
Or I suppose you can probably just do it from the chat. If you can put it in the chat, can you grab it from there?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll do that. And watch out for all these
so I can't
spammers. So there it is, Kev. We'll look out for you in the green room. You'll find all the vegan bubbly and all the lovely vegan goodies in the green room when you arrive.
There was absolutely loads and loads of avocados. I was disappointed. I mean, there was just so many of them. They were just rotting. It's almost like Roger's got a stockpile.
I've got them all. What do you mean a stockpile? I've got all of them.
All of them.
They're yours, Roger.
For our little cut of this, apparently, because there are old ones and there are avocados, but nobody sees any money for them.
All that vegan food.
Yeah.
Hi, Kev.
Hello. The washing machine's on the background, so there's a little bit of background noise. I apologise, but keep yourself muted until I'm going to put me 2 pence.
I think they're all right. I can't hear anything.
Well, we'll keep it clean. Don't worry. So,
it's not Friday.
So as you probably, I think you've been watching along from pretty much the start. So we're kind of just using this as a case study for rights and welfare. And, you know, sadly, it seems that the new kind of animal rising is going to add to the problem from a rights-based point of view rather than try to do something about it, which is a bit sad.
Yeah, well, their first post really kind of announced themselves on Facebook. They used the words exploitation once in that whole post. That's the video and the text that was in there. So I actually asked.
On that note, Kev, you read that quite a few times because I know you commented it. They did end it, didn't they, by saying they were basically appealing to animal and nature lovers.
So they were calling for all animal and nature lovers. If it wasn't those words, it was words to those effect. So I asked if they were looking to end the rights violations or if they were just looking to end the cruelty, because that's all they seem to really talk about. And they did say that they were an abolitionist group, always have been, always will be. But all the language they're using, is very welfareist. So even that gent that you were doing did second one, I think it was, which is when I jumped in about 10 minutes in, when he was talking about we're all animal lovers. Like, I hate it when we get people kind of going on saying, oh, we're all animal lovers. Well, you don't have to be. You just have to be against exploitation and rights violations. But it seems like they're potentially going to be taking the Camp Beagle kind of approach, where it's very much a case of if you love animals, we don't care if you are actually causing their exploitation or not. Which I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose.
I'm getting commentary again. It's these late, these kind of light evenings are not doing great for Rouge, because she used to wake up kind of an hour before the shows usually, and then she was all fed and she was all settled back down again, and then and now she's kind of doing it right in the middle all the time. And she's got a bit deaf now, so she can't really tell what's going on. She just knows that I'm looking at the screen and she doesn't like it. Do you? No, I know. Yeah.
Roger, I sent you the link there in the chat. I have it pulled up on the screen here. The text and the narrative of the Facebook reveal from Animal Rising.
Okay, I click on that, do I?
Yeah, it's the Facebook video that me and Kev were talking about there.
Oh yeah. Well, it's 3 minutes long. I'm not quite sure whether we need to show that, but it was basically their announcement video, wasn't it? Saying that.
The text is like accompanied to the video.
Yes. Yeah, it's today we're launching Animal Rising, a collective of animal lovers who are prepared to rise up and take direct action to see an end to animal suffering in all its forms for all life.
I don't get us wrong, Animal Rebellion were probably the most active of the direct action groups that we've got. It's just, I don't know, it doesn't matter what their actions are or what the message is or what their mission statement is, what their goal is. If the language they use is welfare, cruelty, and abuse, then we're going to get the same reaction that we had from today's action in the comment sections, in the tabloids and whatnot, which is people need to go to the stables and see how they treat. People don't understand how well treated these animals are. It makes no difference how well you treat your slave before you then use them for slavery.
Well, just on the basis of what you just said there, Kev, I mean, Ritzy96 said the Grand National disruption was fantastic, and I'd agree with that, except we're talking about the claims making that went with it. prior to it, during it, and afterwards. Because
don't get us wrong. Sorry, Roger, I'll let you continue. I'll cut you off.
No, I'm just saying, because it's the claims making that would identify it as an animal rights thing or an animal welfare thing. And, it was labeled animal rights, but it didn't sound animal rights. Nothing they said was animal rights, right?
So what I was going to say is the action itself was fantastic. The amount of people that were there was amazing. It's a fantastic way to get people talking about animal rights. But if the people that are putting the action on aren't necessarily making that clear in their language and their actions on the media, for whatever reason, and it could be that we might be overestimating the ability for people, the general public, to make that connection, then it does lead you very quickly down a welfare route. So what potentially could happen off the back of these actions is if people actually started to go, yes, this actually is no longer in line with our moral compass as a nation, we'll just get rid of the hedges and the ditches, and that'll just be a normal horse race, but slightly longer. That's potentially what would happen. It wouldn't get cancelled. There's too much money in it. It would just be a case of, okay, if people have got a problem with horses falling and getting injured, we'll just take away the trip hazards. So that's not a feature we need to get to.
I think Aintree has been modified already a few years ago. I think Beecher's Brook was always a major problem, so I think they made that easier on the horses if they kind of ran into it rather than try to jump over it, that kind of thing. The water jump has always been a problem, and in the comments that you've seen, Andy, they're talking about getting rid of the water jump. Oh, Graham sent.
The three main solutions, shall we say, that have been proposed are less horses in the race, the fences or jumps are lowered, and the water trap is taken away. They're seen as the three workable sort of, well, this would make it a hell of a lot better going forward, so to speak. Yeah.
And change the colour. Is that a joke, or is that an actual proposal?
I don't know. What colour are the jumps? Are they green?
Yeah, the jumps are basically just hedges, aren't they? Yeah.
Then they probably can't see them until the very last minute, which doesn't help them at all.
But that might be on purpose.
So yeah, I would imagine that that's not going to happen. That gives them an advantage that they've purposely taken away from them. But,
I don't know what.
Yeah, I mean, these are all just aspects. It's kind of just making the course more safety. I mean, look at it this way. Imagine we found out there was a soft play centre that was kind of like setting kids up in some Robot Wars style arena where they were just battling it out, and the toughest kid went home with a trophy. And we're sitting here going, look, we've got to do something about this because some of those kids have got broken arms. Can we not put some foam somewhere? That's what we're doing. Can we not put a mat down?
That's like
reorganising the deck chairs on the Titanic. It really is that.
Yeah, and to be fair, that is what the soft plays in the Northeast are actually like, mate. But that's got more to do with the kids than the dog eat dog world once you go through those gates.
But that's pretty much the same thing. You've got like a meeting of parents that are going, instead of realising that this is wrong, how are we going to make this fighting more safe?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. I think that's that's the danger of the welfare language when we're not focused on the rights violations.
Yeah, and
it's a case of
look at this for example, right? And so studies show that horses see white better, but that's a welfare measure.
Yeah,
obviously,
and again,
and I mean, this isn't unknown information to them. They know this, and I would imagine that the reason that they're not those colours is because they don't want them to have that advantage.
I mean, I don't know why they're green. It could just be because the Grand National is an outdoor race, and it's not necessarily like, the equestrians where they do those daft jumps. It could be that they're trying to mimic a more natural environment, possibly. I don't know. I'd have to actually look at it's the pure traditional keeping them the way that they are, because it's the way they've always been. Therefore, that's the Grand National. That's the way they're done. But we know that horses see white better, and that is the reason why the fences in things like the equestrian shows, that's the reason why they're white, so that the horses that they've got pranced about like ballerinas can see the obstacles in time to be able to line themselves up to do what they need to do. Because as much as I was going to say a word, but I'll say person, on their back instructs the horse what to do, the horse has got a mind of their own and understands what they're trained to do. So if they see something coming up, they're going to be able to perform better. Obviously, the Grand National is a little bit different because they're running as fast as they physically can. And I don't know, I'm going to assume that the hedges aren't green purposely so that they struggle to see them. And I think it's probably going to be more of a case of they were made from hedges back in the 60s, 70s when it first started. And they've always been like that, just because I'm guessing that was the easiest thing to do back then for an outdoor race.
Well, Drummer has said something that leads on to the question that I wanted to see, because you've seen more of the press after the event than I have. What has been the Animal Rising response to two things? First of all, they had a lot of horsey people supporting them, didn't they? They had that. So did they kind of comment to them? And then you got lots of different suggestions about different welfare improvements, such as, the painting and such as the water thing and everything. Did they come back and say, well, yeah, but that's not where we're at? Can you remember any of that?
So in the stuff that I've seen, I haven't seen Animal Rising respond to anything. In fairness to them, it's because it was on their post, so to speak. Most of the comments I've read are on like media posts and things like that. I haven't actually looked at, say, Animal Rising's post today to see if anyone's left a comment saying they need to make the fences shorter, to see how Animal Rising have responded to it. I'm not sure about that. Everything that I've read has all been kind of independent.
I had a quick glance at the Facebook page while I was getting the youngest to sleep. I didn't have a good look, but on their latest post, I think it was from this morning, and it focused more on the 118 activists who were arrested and released.
Well, I
didn't. Yeah. To be fair, it is. I suppose they've and the action, like I said, the action itself was fantastic, absolutely amazing. The scale of it, the success that they've seen from it.
More people are talking about the activism than the race, which is what they wanted.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're hosting an open Zoom call tomorrow at 7 p.m. On one of their posts. It does mention about continuing the mission towards animal freedom for all life. So it does seem to be kind of a mix.
That's another one of their slogans, animal freedom for all life, which again, that's a strong one, right? Doesn't quite fit with the rest, unless the idea is that if you have a mixture of things, then the usual kind of thing of not putting anybody off because somebody's going to get something out of that. You know what I mean? Which is kind of really the way that it's worked. In terms of
the only thing that I would say is, sorry, Rouge, but I am going to say it, is going back to kind of like the animal lover thing we were talking about and taking that journalist rewording what the guy had said into consideration. If Animal Rising would have not used the term animal lover and just still focused on the cruelty, they'd have had all these horse lovers and everyone else defend them and support them regardless of using those two words. And they wouldn't have put other people off. If they'd have come through and talked very much so like, we're an animal rights group, this is what we're going to do, and still mention the elements of cruelty like they did, but back up their position, they'd have still got all those non-vegan people that think that the race is cruel, and they'd have got us. Because I mean, surely they've done some research into this. They've been going a long time. They must know that the journalists and the general public already think we're a welfare movement. They already think about words like suffering, cruelty, treatment.
But they're not. You see, I was thinking that, well, they're kind of like a brand new group, aren't they, in terms of their new approach. They've now kind of, if you like, they've moved away from the shackles of Extinction Rebellion.
But what I mean is they've been on like TV programs, they've been in the newspaper. Animal Rebellion got a hell of a lot of media coverage last summer during the milk stuff. So they know what journalists are like, and they know what the public interpretation of their group is. So I think they've got that support regardless. People are either going to see what they did and think it was great, or they were going to see what they did and they were going to feel annoyed by it or aggrieved by it.
Yeah, and the people at the top of Animal Rising, are the people who were pretty much the string pullers for Animal Rebellion as well. So it's not like it's a new team at the top with a new direction. It's that they've adjusted their direction to allegedly focus more on animals than environment. which when I heard about it, I thought that's absolutely phenomenal. And I was just, I wouldn't say disappointed, but a little bit worried when I seen that the way that their first post was kind of worded.
Yeah, well, I think this one, this is one of the first things that they said with regard to the run up to the thing. And again, I think there's virtually been no post that hasn't included this nation of animal lovers, and they usually say that first, you know. So it's animal lovers, then the thing about harming.
Absolutely. I mean, that's going to work quite well when we're talking about MBR acres or horse racing. Are you going to be able to call on the nation of animal lovers when you want to go and start removing pigs from farms? Because they're not and never will be. So it's kind of like, I mean, I think you're creating a rod for your own back by continuing with it. If you want to mention it once for effect or whatever, but yeah, to keep using that as your mantra, you're actually going to alienate a lot of people who don't love chickens or turkeys or pigs or any of these animals. I mean, for the most part, I don't need to.
Well, unless that's part of their kind of linguistic challenge to the nation, saying, well, we're a nation of animal lovers, and so therefore this follows, not eating them, but actually liberating them.
I mean, my main concern with that text there is that they say that we shouldn't be harming animals for entertainment. Now, does the general public see a well-kept zoo as harm? No. But it's absolutely fundamentally wrong.
Most people don't see a zoo as entertainment either at all. Will argue the point, in fact, that it's not there for entertainment. So yeah, little things like that aren't going to be qualified. Yeah. That's what they argue the toss. Yes.
Okay, I suppose I'll reword it slightly then. So you go to a sea life centre and you've got a seal show on. Do they see that as harm? Because that is entertainment, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, they don't. But you would. Most people now would say that keeping orcas in a pool is harmful to them, but keeping a smaller animal isn't potentially. It's the relationship of the language that's used, I suppose, that's important. It's not what they mean. It's what people, the connection that people then make with that statement. So you could read that as someone that's not vegan and be like, I completely agree with that, because who would not agree with that?
Well, look, how many times have we been on lives together and we've had people in arguing against it and they say, I don't love animals. Why should I do this? I don't love animals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's quite
it's not another thing, but
I would go so far as to say that
there's lots of people. Sorry, we're talking. But there's lots of people that say we're upset by the confinement tank that these orcas or dolphins would spend the bulk of their life in, but we're never upset with the show. Right, these would be the same people that would walk around the Sea Life Centre and they'd see them, before the show in these tiny little tanks. They go, oh, that's cruel. But then they'd sit there and watch these same animals perform and not see any cruelty whatsoever at the same place, the same animals. So yeah, absolutely. Like if you're going to go down that level, you've got to rely on people being actually offended by this, and they won't be because they don't see it as that.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be that that's the thing that they're trying to shift the consciousness on that level. Maybe. I mean, we don't know at this stage. We might know a bit more in 24 hours, but it is interesting that could be actually a strategy of theirs.
It could be. And I mean, for all we know, they could be doing it to invoke conversations just like we're having now, because we're still talking about them.
I really hope that is the case, and then it starts to get steered towards rights violations as the press movement goes on, because this isn't just going to be today. This is going to be in the press for probably the next 48 hours.
Everybody up, Kev?
Yeah, so then hopefully in the next couple of days, we'll start to see people going on things like Good Morning Britain, the usual suspects, but talking about the rights violations. They're talking about the animal lover thing to get people on board, because that's an easier sell, isn't it? You don't have to change your life to say that I'm an animal lover and I'm against harm to animals for entertainment. You don't, you can still have a bacon sandwich while saying that.
Yeah, I mean, taking that into consideration, maybe that is the tactic. Maybe, like, just for example, they're thinking, right, these extra 200 people that came yesterday, if we arrange, say in June, we're going to go to a pig farm, and I get in touch with all them and go, well, you said you was an animal lover. That might work really well. Like if that's
the ironic thing is that I probably wouldn't even identify as an animal lover. Like I'm fascinated by nature, but I don't want to go, and cuddle cows. You know what I mean?
This is what I mean. But if they were going to use it in that way, where they were going to lure these people in with some of these things, and then
it
all
could
of
be a
sudden when they
strategy, couldn't it? It could be a strategy. Yeah.
Well,
that's right.
if that was the idea, that would actually work exceptionally well.
Yeah.
I mean, because it would always be like, well, I thought we were friends. I thought we were on the same page. I thought we were in agreement. And what? Yeah, that could work.
It would be a fantastic piece of reverse psychology, wouldn't it?
It would be brilliant. Yeah.
I'm going to show you the next slide, and then I'm just going to shoot off for a minute and machine gun a cat. So hang on.
Not very vegan of you, Roger. It'd be interesting to get on that Zoom call.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're tuning in.
What I don't want this to come across as is that we're. Yeah, what I don't want this to come across is that we're sat here just criticising Animal Rising for what they've done, because I think they've achieved a hell of a lot in this action. A massive movement, 118 people arrested. So how many people are actually there? In the conversation that has started, it's more a case of, I suppose, airing concerns around how it's steered going forward, if we're talking about rights violations or if we're just talking about cruelty. The thing is, if we ban the Grand National, all we're really going to do is move that onto something else. So we ban the Grand National after the back of this action. Let's just say that we get what we wanted, but ban the Grand National. So do we have another race in its place on the same day without the barriers? It is all horse racing banned, so we just start betting on dogs and we have bigger dog races. It's a bit like when we banned the fur trade. We just moved it somewhere else. People still wanted to participate in that exploitation, so they just, it just got moved up to something else or somewhere else. So it could be that the Grand National is banned in the UK, so it starts getting done in Spain or France or Germany, absolutely, and then everybody else just starts betting on it there. It's just you're not really changing anything. You just, it seems like a big victory, but actually all you've done is eradicated a form of income for the UK and put it somewhere else, or you've removed that exploitation of the horses just in that one thing around gambling, but you've moved it on to another animal. So that's the concern, I suppose, is that we need to be talking about the rights violations. The reason why the Grand National isn't the problem, it's the way that we view horses or dogs or any other animal that we see as entertainment, or any other animal that we see as anything in the world, because let's face it, the human species sees animals as lesser than them, which is incorrect. Or not lesser than them, lesser to the point that they are just a thing and not a somebody.
It was a different track, and it was just a flat, straight race, no jumps, no traps, no, and I mean, the research was this particular course has got the best safety record in the country, and that's where it was yesterday. Whether they'd have got anything like the same support, or whether that people I mean, that video that Animal Rising released yesterday, I'm not 100% sure which horse it was, but it was like 3/4 of the way through the event, and they're literally like, this is why we're here. From their point of view, that couldn't have worked out any better. Obviously they don't want the horse to fall over, but in order to make their point, that worked out exceptionally. Whereas if it was just a flat grass straight with no jumps and the fall rate was massive, it'd be interesting to see whether people were as bad.
You must have all noticed, though, that there's a big push to blame the protesters for the deaths, right? Yes. Which is a bit rich, since one of them happened when they weren't even there a day before, I believe. So, how can that be?
It's just another deflection, isn't it?
49 was it on your opening slide this year so far?
Yeah. So
that obviously wasn't anything to do with the protesters, was it? Even if you could say, look, the protesters were 100% at fault for one horse. What about the other 48?
Well, that's 49 killed as well. How many more have been injured or suffered injury?
Fallen over, broken legs, and recovered. That's being killed. Yeah.
Or even things
that's an important point, because you do get a lot of injuries because they're highly strung. I mean, I I did a piece about horse racing, or at least it involved that in a paper back in 2001, and you know that they have their tendons fired sometimes. You know they've got fairly kind of spindly legs. You know they haven't got natural. You know their physiology is not that natural. You know
the year had those burn marks all the way up their legs. Yeah.
Well, even to make it a bit more, just to make it a bit more understandable, I suppose, to one of a better point, is racing horses are basically athletes of the horse world. How often do athletes of the human world get injured? You can only expect that they're a living being at the end of the day. They're an organic machine like the human body. They're going to get injured through even probably in training, let alone racing. So it's all of that as well, all of that unnecessary kind of suffering, if you will, for one of a better term.
Yeah,
and the psychological damage as well.
Yeah.
But the athlete wants to do it, right? The athlete has got this
dream
the best sprinter or the best footballer. The horse is doing all of this, without the consent. So what they want to do and what they're thinking is never taken into consideration at any point ever, and yet still they're pushed to these levels. I mean, it's hard enough pushing an athlete when they genuinely want to do it, right? There's only so far they can go. They don't even want to take part. They don't even want to be there.
And I suppose the only reason that a horse would run that fast in the natural world would be to escape something. So what's that doing? Like Graham said, like the psychological trauma, what's that doing to them in their mind if they're being flogged by the person on their back that they probably trust to run as fast as their legs could carry them? What do they think is behind them potentially?
What do you?
I mean,
what do you make of it, people?
People often say that they really enjoy running, which obviously I'm not going to argue with. Of course they do. My kids when they were little used to really enjoy running, but it wasn't an excuse to put someone on their back. However, what people forget is they love to run as part of the herd. A big part of the reason that they're not allowed to see the horse, the side of them, is because that entire social aspect that they depend on and love is taken away. They don't want them to know that there are horses either side of them. They don't want them to be distracted by anything except winning the race for the human being. So one of the key parts of them enjoying running around isn't even in part of it, because who is around them, they don't know, they're not aware, they're not allowed any interaction, they've never met these horses before. And at the moment, at the end of the race, if they manage to make it round and survive, they'll get shoved in the back of a horse bus and taken home. There's no social aspect whatsoever. Even at the traps at the beginning, they're all confined. They're not allowed to see one another.
Yeah.
Every part of the social element that you could give them is taken away.
But if we corrected all them, if there was no horse deaths, there was no injuries, it was 100% safe, they were allowed to have social interactions, they were allowed to run together, would people, the general public, still see that as a wrong? Or would they think that was a great sort of exploitation?
It would almost be like the gambling version, because let's face it, that's what fuels horse racing. It would be like the gambling version of the backyard eggs argument that you get, wouldn't it? Yeah. Where you remove all of the obvious harm, but there's still exploitation there.
Okay, so Vegan Island Radio is saying that the message is abolition from Animal Rising. So,
reading that message, I would say to that individual that they've done. Well done and congratulations, first of all, by the way. No one's taken anything away from what you've achieved yesterday. But I would say that what we're talking about isn't what you can do at an individual level. It's, and correct us if I'm wrong here, guys, it's more the message that the organization that you're representing, if you will, their message at a high end that they're putting out. And we're all hoping that we see that they direct this towards a more animal rights point of view. But from what we've seen, the language that's being used has been very much cruelty and abuse rather than rights violations. And there's probably reasons for that. They've probably got people that have studied sociology and psychology and stuff. And this is the way that they've been advised to go. But is that the right way to go? Are we not going to potentially end up with
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point, Kev, in the sense that, I mean, Vegan Island Radio is saying, what do you suggest we do? Now, I would suggest that clarity and consistency of message is important. because that's the basis of advertising. We've known this for years and years. In terms of that research that you mentioned, sociological and psychological, we know that you need to repeat the same message over and over again, rather than giving a variety of confused messages with different values in it. And unless that is kind of tactical, that they're doing it in the reason that we were talking about 10 minutes ago, that they're going to change it. At the moment, they were, wanting to get onto the national platforms.
Yeah,
and
once and honestly, if that is the reasoning behind it, like what we were discussing a little while ago, that sort of reverse psychology, then it's absolutely genius. And I couldn't give them any more respect than that for it.
Yeah, but would you do it yourself though?
I can't argue with it if it works, because what else? We've had this conversation loads of times. What else are we proposing at the moment?
Yeah. What about all the activists around the world listening to these messages? And if 9 out of 10 words is welfare versus abolition, what's their take-home message? What are they going to go out and take into their activism themselves? They're going to be using the 9 out of 10 words that they've learned from elsewhere.
Absolutely, but at least they're seeing someone do something. That's the thing. It is at least there is that inspiration of like.
Yeah, the Grand National was a target because it's the premier race in the country, if not the world, in fact, and a prime example of animal exploitation for entertainment. This is a rights violation. Yeah, so I'd agree with that statement as it stands there. The real issue is the claims making that was kind of part of this deal, and that was before, during, and after. We've still got, as Graham just said, the majority of claims don't suggest in people's minds that it's abolition, but they do say, fair dues, they say that they want to abolish horse racing. They have said that, and in fact, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a clip of a slide of their petition in a minute. So that was that one there. So this is some of the fallout. The Daily Fail, the right wing comic from Britain, claims to have saved the Grand National because they're the ones who were supposed to have had somebody undercover, right? And then the Irish Sunday People. They were complaining. I said in messages to everybody before that because it had coverage on page 4 and 5 as well. I think it was. You do notice it said 118 arrests as protest delay £150 million race, right? As though that's got anything to do with it in terms of the morality. But of course, if there's that much money involved, people, then you can do anything, right? And so there's that. But they said on page 4 or 5 that they tried to stop it, but not for long, which I thought was quite a witty headline that they had for that. But so the press seems to be taking this line that they weren't very keen on the action whatsoever. This is
if there's any journalists listening that are trying to make a reputation for yourself, take the Daily Mail's headline and rip them to bits, because those horses weren't saved regardless. I would use them to launch yourself, and if they think they saved the Grand National, talk about the horses that died that aren't even mentioned or considered. They saved the National, i.e. the race wasn't abandoned.
The problem, I suppose, with media is all they're doing is regurgitating information that they want or they think that the public want to hear. So they're never going to really be controversial in their front page, Ollie. They're not going to be controversial in the headlines. They're not going to. Could you imagine if the Daily Mail were in all support for what had happened yesterday? There'd be uproar. In fact, it would probably be just as big a bit of activism as the actual action itself. If someone like the Daily Mail or someone kind of put on saying like, congratulations to Animal Rising for disrupting and bringing conversation on animal rights, that in itself would probably get bigger headlines than the action itself. But it would cause a huge amount of issues within their profit line, wouldn't it? Let's face it.
The newspapers know exactly who to target.
Care at all about the animals.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that they might want an opportunity to make one of their rivals look completely stupid in front of the entire public. I don't expect them to do it from a rights point of view, just from the point of view that who did you save? What did you save? You want to take credit for this, but everyone watched horses die on their screen. It's a real simple attack at them.
Yeah, well, they don't, do they? I mean, screen is the right word. They come running on with these screens, didn't they? So, Graham, I didn't hear what you were saying then.
I was just saying that, like, the newspapers will always pander to their target audience, and looking at the headlines, it just goes to show how far society is away from total liberation of all sentient beings.
Oh yeah, I would say newspapers are a little bit away from that. This is them arriving at
just a little bit.
Yeah, just a bit. This is them arriving yesterday at Aintree. If you two are an animal lover, get down. So they were doing that in advance, weren't they? Saying we're animal lovers. If you are, come and join us. And so again, if you were to kind of think of it in tactical sense, that kind of could make sense, couldn't it? I suppose, and then you've got the joiners in demanding an end to this suffering. Now, what's happened now, of course, is that a lot of people have thought, well, we can end the suffering by reducing the field and by reducing the size of the fences and everything. So everybody is kind of gone for the welfare solution to that kind of thing, which you could, I suppose, is kind of a natural thing for them to do. As I said, I think the bloodstock, so-called, and all the kind of pro-racing people quickly got on board with this message that Animal Rising were responsible for the deaths of the horses. But this is interesting, carrying out acts of cruelty. I couldn't resist putting that bottom bit in because
how much can you insinuate? Like,
how do you mean? Have you lost us, Andy?
Oh no,
I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
What are they getting that headline from? Like, what are they insinuating from that sentence that Animal Rising have contributed towards?
I think it's the fact that a lot of them have claimed that the reason because you keep them in the kind of trap before they're released.
I think my internet's struggling a moment.
Yeah, you're all over the place there, Andy, I'm afraid. I think it's that, Kevin, that it's they were held in this trap thing and that disorientated them, and then when they released, it wasn't kind of normal or something like that.
Right. So what they're basically saying is that because they were put in a situation that was exploitative, dangerous, going to cause them potential harm, that the people that were there to try and stop that caused it. It's a bit like when you're outside of a slaughterhouse and you're at a vigil and they say, oh, you're causing the animals distress. It's like, hang on, they've just been transported 40 miles, they'd be killed. Like, are we causing them distress, or is the fact that you sent them here in the first place the distressing thing? It's like, it's an oxymoron, isn't it, almost? It's like, it's like the most obvious deflection of guilt that you'll probably see.
Yeah, this might be a fair point here. See, this is unfortunately a fair point from a rights-based point of view. If you're against rights violations of non-human animals and believe in animal liberation, come down and join us. It's not going to work. So it could well be a kind of tactical thing, couldn't it, in that sense?
Yeah, I agree with that, to be fair, because you will have a much bigger target audience. Let's face it, right? There's not many people out there. If you asked them on the street, if you did like a poll on the street and said, do you hate animals to the point that you would wish them to be, killed, tortured, whatever you want to say? Or do you love animals to the point that you would want to avoid that? Then everybody would probably be, if that was a scale of 0 being let's just torture them and maim them, to 10 being let's cuddle them, everybody would probably be at least above a 5. But then if you give them the real world examples of that, then you'd find that the scales would change massively, wouldn't you? So it very much probably is a case of let's use the language that's going to attract the most people, potentially alienate the least, maybe.
Yeah. So you're thinking get them in and then do the education or the change in narrative. Then is that
Yeah, probably, I suppose.
So Andy, have we got you back on audio only, or we don't? I don't think we've even got that. Okay. Right. In that case, I'll drop him back out then. Right, there we go. This is an interesting point from Joanna, that if the jockeys had been the ones dying, I mean, I guess that would have gone back for years and years, wouldn't it? You know, that it would happen.
Well, whenever a jockey has died, it's always sparked a huge conversation, hasn't it?
But that's kind of consistent across all sort of rights violations. You know, any human's rights violation, it's always about ending an abolitionist straight away. With animals, it's always about reducing the suffering, or how can we make it better for the animals. You never talk about ending the exploitation straight off like they would with humans.
No, that's true. So this is a petition, and again we've got what did I say on this one? It's again there's a lot of references to cruel horse racing, but I suppose again this could be this kind of tactic that we're kind of talking about. One point. Oh, Andy, gone again. He's just trying to mess us up. So I guess this is a abolitionist petition, a single issue abolitionist petition. So, you know,
just wondering there, that last line of the first paragraph, causing many of them unnecessary and prolonged suffering.
Yeah, well, again, we're in this thing about potentially that we're thinking this is their claims making, which is on purpose, you know, in order to get people on board and everything. Now, it doesn't rule out the critique that it's not consistent, and so therefore it's confusion, and also it doesn't do anything from a rights-based point of view. But there's that. Are you back, Andy, completely, or what?
Yeah. I think my internet just slowed down. Yeah. Everyone was a bit like Star Trekky, so I just left and came back.
We were talking about this one when you were gone. What do you think of this? If you're against rights violations of non-humans and believe in animal liberation, come down and join us. The suggestion is if that was their spiel, they wouldn't have got anybody. But then he said,
I mean, for starters, there's no reason or any need to include of non-humans. That doesn't help the cause, and I mean, there's no need to make that distinction because they're included. If you're against rights violations and believe in animal liberation and justice, I'd attend that. That sounds like
but I mean, just in terms of
I can understand the point, but I suppose at the same time, most people. It depends how you look at it. If you're going to call on all animal lovers, are you going to hold them to account? That's the point. So if say afterwards there was, I don't know, a vigil just down the road, could you get those people to come along, or are they going to go home and eat those animals that are being killed at the slaughterhouse? Because if so, being an animal lover means absolutely nothing, right?
Well, could you imagine if animal?
There needs to be some unity here, and most people don't love most animals. Let's be honest. They love dogs, cats, budgies, birds, rabbits, horses. And once we get out of this sort of list, how are they going to use that unless it really is a way of kind of like reverse psychology? I think you're kind of making a rod for your own back otherwise, because you're going to get a lot of people that turn like a bit further down the line and say, well, I don't agree with that. They're food animals.
Well, yeah, exactly that. It's like, I would even say that with a group like Animal Rising, they're a direct action group. So what's to say that they decide that they're going to shut down 15 slaughterhouses across the UK, a bit like the dairy industry, but focusing on flesh. How many people would they get with the animal lover tagline with "We're going to stop the production of meat in the UK"? You probably have a lot of people going, "Whoa, hang on."
No, but if that is the challenge, though, I mean, because if they want to use this rhetoric of nation of animal lovers, which is one of the main things that they said, we are animal lovers, they said, and we're also a nation of animal lovers. And I mean, animal lover has come back into the movement big time in the last kind of 7 or 8 years. It was very rarely said really before, or it was pretty much frowned on at one point in the movement. But if they're wanting to use that to actually say, okay, we're gonna use this rhetoric in association with something that nobody would argue with, which are horses being killed, and then try to create a challenge by then doing other things and say, well, we are the animal lovers who did the Aintree thing, and now we're the animal lovers in this pig farm. And so, I mean, I personally still wouldn't like it, but I can kind of see that might be a strategy.
Yeah, if you're going to use that kind of speciesism to suck people in and then use their speciesism as a way to kind of hold them to account, then that's really clever. But I think that there's only going to be a small percentage of people that's going to work on, and everyone else is going to be hostile. In the same way that if you went on TikTok Live now and said, "Are you an animal lover?" we wouldn't get people understanding and being sympathetic to what we're trying to explain at all.
But it's that, isn't it? It's the potential with the new kind of huge volume of volunteers of animal lovers that they've got. When they do talk about doing something, like almost like if in the background, if you will, in their private chats, they went, right, now we've done this, we're going to talk about eggs or dairy or flesh production or clothing or testing, then you'd get a lot of those animal lovers very quickly disappear. And you'd have some receptive people, obviously, which is great, but you'd have a lot of them just going, I feel attacked by that statement or by this action or by this video or by whatever it is that you're doing. Therefore, I no longer support this cause. Goodbye.
But that's what they said they are going to do.
Yeah.
Vegan Island Radio, could I just ask you a quick question? With the chats and the organisation that went on behind the scenes, was there much talk about the veganism philosophy, where it originated, the founding members, the pioneers in the movement? Was that kind of brought up and discussed with any new members or any activists that had decided to join in? Just curious.
Yeah, so it's about so we are kind of like in the kind of interesting kind of seminar type kind of situation here, and you can probably imagine what it would have been like at one of the kind of planning meetings where they're saying, okay, what is our claims making going to be, and so they clearly gone for this idea of trying to use this generalized kind of accepted thing that we're a nation of animal lovers. I mean, of course, from an animal rights point of view, you just have to think about that for about 2 nanoseconds to realize it's a lot of bollocks anyway. Really, So the idea that I mean, like they were talking about the 3 horses killed. I mean, there'll be more other animals killed per second in the slaughterhouses than that, right? And so,
absolutely,
to associate what's going on in a society which is full of houses of slaughter, and associate that with being a nation of animal lovers, I mean, just objectively, it's not true, right?
Yeah, that would be
not
interesting.
to mention, as we was discussing earlier, how many of those bloodlines weren't good enough, say, and were culled or killed as foals, or because they wouldn't got part of the training regime, or they fell over young, or they weren't strong enough, or the right size, or fat, or any of these things where they threw the jockey off. They're all called, and they don't get mentioned. They're all forgotten, and they're not bred from again, or any of these things. It's almost like a punishment. That entire bloodline now is cast aside. Like, all of this never gets considered because they don't make it to the track.
I think an interesting statistic on that point, Roger, would be 3 horses died during the Grand National, but actually get this statistic for in that amount of time, how many other animals died for everything that you agree with.
Well, I mean, obviously, from an animal rights point of view and abolitionist point of view, you'd also have to look at the restaurants that are in Aintree, and you know the catering that went on during the day. I mean, we've got a final picture. I believe it's this one. Somebody sent a
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's actually what I meant to bring up when I first joined. That is one thing I've not seen mentioned anywhere. So, if you're still in the chat, anyone that was there yesterday as a protester, what about people that say would have turned up who had a placard and got, I'm against horse racing? By the way, I'm just going to go and get myself a pork bap, because there was a hog roast there, all of the restaurants, all of the bars, they're selling animal products. How did that go down?
Yeah, but you've got that with all single issues. Like, you know, if you're outside a Greyhound
that's
stadium,
what I mean. Surely they must have. If you're going to reach out to animal lovers, surely you are going to get people that are against horse cruelty, but are going to go to the snack van afterwards, or go, who's coming to McDonald's afterwards. This kind of mentality. How was that dealt with?
Well, I mean, it's not an animal rights issue, this, but I was there was an environmentalist march in Newcastle last year. And I was there with Northeast Animal Rights, and we were marching alongside like Extinction Rebellion and, you know, the big names in the environmental movement. And they were eating like Greek sausage rolls, pork sausage rolls, or pig flesh sausage rolls, I should say, and they're just throwing the wrapper on the floor. I'm like, do you understand how ironic that actually is? Not only are you contributing towards one of the biggest causes of climate and environmental damage, you're also littering whilst you're advocating for the end of environmental damage. Like, I nearly got told off, actually, because I became quite vocal to people in the march.
I find that hard to believe, Kev.
I had to calm myself down.
Stuff like that obviously happens, doesn't it? I know that's been a point of contention at Camp Beagle quite a few times, especially in the early days, where people were turning up and basically eating others in front of people who were vegan and all of that kind of thing. And if we put it in terms of maths, you know, how many animals were sold at Aintree yesterday in a BAP? I mean, we're talking about tens of thousands of lives.
Well, Vegan Island Radio say we're all vegan abolitionists, and so what Andy, I think, is getting at is that with that kind of animal lover, come and join us type rhetoric, you're gonna see this is almost like one of the problems now in the movement right now with the pressure campaigns, is the fact that when you used to trot along in the 80s to a pressure campaign, nobody would be asking people, how long have you been vegan? Nobody would have vegan apparel on, and so you wouldn't even kind of ask that question. And so, but now with veganism being so central to the movement, this puts an extra pressure on a kind of a pressure campaign, because people tend to say, "Oh, how you doing? You know, my name is so and so. How long have you been vegan?" Right? And then if somebody goes, "Well, I'm not," and all this kind of stuff, but then you've got the argument separate to that is that those people should still be welcomed because they're then going to be campaigning with, rubbing shoulders with vegans. So that's the argument, right? So it's not as though we should, as it were, banish such people. We hope to be able to influence them by acting in concert with them. That'll be the argument, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let's again reiterate. I don't think anyone here is criticizing animal rising or any of the ideas. It's just a point of conversation at the end of the day, talking about the language and things like that, because we should be able to discuss these things. There's absolutely nothing wrong. There's no, I mean, at the end of the day, credit where credit's due. A massive round of applause for them for organising it, for getting the people down there, and for everybody that took part. Even more so if you spent a night in a cell. Like, honestly, my hat goes off to you. That shouldn't even be up for contention here. We're just having a conversation about the use of language and what the idea is moving forward. I'm all supportive of any form of direct action. At the end of the day, there aren't other groups that are doing something better. There aren't other groups that are doing anything at all. So we're not here to criticise what they're doing. We're just trying to understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's trying to put this as a case study in a general talk about welfare and rights. That's where it's going.
Yeah.
So, Graham, this is your stuff, right? So I've just taken it straight from the thing. I think you sent about 4 or 5 things. So this is News Talk. So for people who don't know, News Talk is a national Irish radio station. And so did they have a big feature on it or something? Was it today, Graham, or yesterday?
Yeah, no, that was their article from today, kind of talking about what happened at Aintree and speaking about it in broad terms about the activism and the direct action.
And was that on air or was it just on their website?
No, it was an article on their website there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, and so so this is where you start to get the people coming in with all the suggestions. Just reduce the height of the fencing. No need for a ban. This one from Fitzsimmons. If you own a pet dog, you contribute to an industry that is responsible for thousands upon thousands of deaths every year. Too many hypocrites in this modern society. Okay. Any human animal that travels in ways, in any way, shape, or form, is at risk of death. What's the answer? Stationary. Okay. I don't think I want to read this guy's any more than that. This person, they do have a point. I do love the race, but the delay definitely affected the horses. So that's going back to that. So the protesters caused some of the carnage. So that's an interesting thing. But again, as you say, Andy, you can't attribute that to the other, 40. Well, the other 49 already, and even at least one of the 3 was the day before the protesters even arrived, right? And so you can't do that. Yeah. Then you got Francis Stanley just making a welfare thing. They're looked after very well, Balibar. I saw somebody saying that they are looked after better than the human babies, I think.
I've seen that claim. They apparently race horses are the most looked after animal on the planet, apparently.
That's only because they're making their exploits profit.
Let's give them that benefit of the doubt. They are. So what does that change about anything that we're talking about? I'm sure Andrew Tate's property was treated better than someone in a crack house in my town. And what are we talking about? Nothing. Yeah. Irrelevant semantics. Changes nothing about the fundamental wrong. So it's irrelevant.
And let's face it, this is it's a business, isn't it, at the end of the day? So if you could get more profit out by cutting corners, then you probably already are, but you would cut more corners, wouldn't you? It's when it starts to eat your profits, because when that animal becomes unhealthy or isn't as fit, then they're going to be less likely to win. You are less likely to then earn money
it would be
from that animal.
Interesting too to see, right, how that brilliant, luxurious care, does that extend when they're retired? Does it extend when they fall over? Are they entitled to the vet treatment through the rest of their days, are they? Or is it once they don't earn any more money, that's the end of them? Because that's how it definitely seems.
I didn't see this. I didn't twig this when I first saw this, Graham. You see that third one? What about the horses they injured with a ladder?
Yeah.
Because it was spelt wrong, so I didn't read it as ladder at first. But so obviously they had these kind of ladders to get over the fences, right? And so they're now claiming that they injured some of the horses with the ladders, which was a bit of a weird idea, because I think the ladders are on the other side of the fence in the first place, and then I think they jumped down from the top, but I'm not quite sure. So
how on earth did they injure a horse with the ladder? I don't know. I hadn't read that either.
No, there was a lot of comments on there that were kind of silly or just derogatory.
Yeah, this one here I think is great. Somebody said, "I wouldn't listen to a bunch of communists."
Yeah,
it's well known that the modern day vegan animal liberation movement is absolutely cram-packed full of communists, as we all know. So, absolutely cram-packed full of them. What does this screen do? Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Look at that. Well, so that's our film and our slides and the reaction that that Graham sent from News Talk. So I think it's just interesting, isn't it, to see whether what happens now. Yeah, I see. John, where basically no one in this movement has thought through what animal rights abolition means in legal terms. Well, obviously, some people have. You know, you got Wise, Stephen Wise. Obviously, you got Francione. You got Reagan, Lee Hall, and even people like Joan Denea. So, I don't know. I would have thought. In fact, I think it's absolutely certain that when Reagan wrote the Case for Animal Rights, he thought that was a manifesto, and it would lead to, you know, because one of the things that he says, I think, in his summary, the 89 summary, is that moral rights should lead to legal rights, right? And so, I mean, we had an influencer on the putting a video out yesterday saying other animals don't have rights. Well, from an animal rights point of view, they do. It's just that they're disrespected and not respected. And the idea would be, because Reagan called in that 89 thing, he called twice, I think. He said, what we're saying is the law's got to take notice of these moral rights and transfer them into legal rights. Okay. Now, if they refuse to do that, it doesn't mean the moral rights are not there. You know, it's like saying women didn't have rights until the kindly men of the British Parliament, you know, did something for them in terms of the legal right to vote, for example. I mean, that, you know, it'd be nonsense to say that they were rightsless before that. You know, but again, you see, I think there's a lot of confusion between legal rights and moral rights in the movement, and negative rights and positive rights as well. You know, if we could just learn those two things, legal rights, moral rights, negative rights, positive rights, you're onto a pretty good understanding of animal rights already, you know. But I mean, it's clear from a lot of comments, even from influential people in the movement, that they get confused and mixed up. I mean, obviously, in that 89 speech, famously, Baroness Warnock did that, right? So she started talking about being in a wheelchair and, you know, all that kind of thing. So for people who don't know what we're talking about, we're talking about a 1989 full debate, which was part of an animal night on the BBC, and it attracted 1 million viewers. And a full copy emerged recently. And so we kind of did a special animal vegan time tunnel on it. So if you don't know what you're talking about, and we've intrigued you enough to find out, it's on my channel in the vegan time tunnel tab. Right, that was a very messy advert, wasn't it?
Roger, I hope you don't mind. In some of the leaflets I created, I actually have the link to that debate on your time tunnel and the QR code. Is that okay? I probably should have asked you before throwing it.
No, that's all right. I mean, it's a public thing, you know. I mean, like, yeah, I always find it a bit odd when people kind of, you know, people go, "Oh, I like that meme. Can I share it?" And it's got a share button below it and everything and all that. And so you just think, well, yeah, I mean, this is the internet, isn't it? You know, so that's
I suppose again, from a socialist movement as well. I mean, Andy does this very well. It's a case of like, Andy's like, take me content, steal it. I don't care if you put me into it or not. Claim it's yours for all I care. Just get the message out there. And I suppose it's kind of very much that, isn't it? It's kind of, I don't care how it's shared, where it goes, who does it, as long as the message is shared.
Yeah, it's like, Andy, you use Audacity, don't you? You know, right. Yeah. Okay. So when you transfer from an Audacity audio file to an MP3, it gives you a list of things that you can put it under, like copyright and this kind of stuff. There's also things like Creative Commons and that kind of stuff, which a lot of the kind of anarchists would use. Or some people just kind of click the box which say, you know, don't no restrictions whatsoever, kind of thing. So people can do what they want with it, essentially. You know, so it wouldn't be a copyrighted thing. in the first
Yeah,
place.
because once upon a time, when I used to release some audio files on my Instagram, that's exactly what I used to do. I used to spend 10-15 minutes on Audacity filling out every single box with something vegan related, and then realizing that I was turning them into videos. And even if someone downloaded the video, they'd never access any of that metadata, and I was just wasting my time for months.
No, that's just for
you.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even know if we can access it after you've written it. I think it just goes somewhere else, doesn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I didn't realize. Yeah, I remember noticing them once and thinking, what a great idea of kind of like forcing a message on people without them even seeing it. And yeah, it was only me. So don't try that.
It's just like planting that seed. You should have put we're animal lovers. We're animal lovers. That's what you should have put.
The seed was planted so deep it was never going to grow, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with this, Jonah Whale, except they are kind of linked in aspirational terms. The idea is that moral rights, we hope, will become legal rights, but they exist whether they do or not. And so it's the same as if you get some regime come in. I mean, like what we're talking about this with the Taliban at the moment, and suddenly taking away girls' rights to education and this kind of stuff doesn't mean that they are not rights holders still.
I mean, the moral rights matter just as much, if not more in some cases, as the legal rights. I suppose for me the difference is the legal rights. The legal part of it is the very little amount of protection we can give someone to those rights. It's not even protection, it's just a case of if you violate someone's rights, there will be a repercussion. I suppose that's the difference between moral rights and legal rights. You can violate someone's moral rights that aren't protected legally, and there'll be no legal repercussion. There might be a social repercussion, but no one's going to fine you, throw you in jail, hold you accountable legally for it. Yeah. Whereas the legal rights, I suppose, it's the other way around. It's a bit like, and for me, I think there will be people that will still violate rights because there are people that still violate legal rights. So if animals got legal rights, let's say that their most basic fundamental moral rights become legal, the legal right to live without exploitation. And if people and exploitation and harm, there'll be people out there that still will violate that because there's people out there that violate human rights.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we can look forward to a black in a vegan world. We look forward to a black market operating on all kinds of levels, whether it's going to be blood sports or whether it's going to be, people meeting in some faraway barn to have some goddamn game flesh or some crap. There'll be.
Yeah, I mean, you've still got dog fighting rings and stuff, don't you, going on, and cockfighting rings and whatnot, even though they're illegal. So you're still going to have.
And the thing is, the significant factor is from the rights bearer, from the victim. They don't give a shit whether it's legal or not. It makes no difference to them whether it's legal. So it only makes a difference to the oppressor because there might be a risk entailed, i.e. if I do this, what might happen to me? When you're the victim, you don't care whether something's illegal or not. It's not like sexism wasn't a problem until we decided it was a crime. It was always a problem. There was always a victim and an oppressor. It's just that one day someone decided to put that down on a piece of paper. That's all the legal aspect is. Yeah. It was the victim always feels the consequences.
It's kind of weird that we need a legality to give us a reminder of these rights, in a sense.
Well, for some people, if they're not legal rights, then they don't exist. Mm-hmm. That's unfortunate. A lot of North Americans are a little bit like that, which is often why that they're opposed to the idea of children's rights. They locate the rights in the parents, and then the parents have got a duty of care, but there's no direct rights in the kids themselves, and of course
that's a potentially dangerous road to go down.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. You can see it. You can see how dangerous that idea is.
Let's just remove the rights from some of the potentially most vulnerable members of the human society and expect society to protect them.
I think old people are very vulnerable. I want to ask Graham, Kev, and Andy, what am I supposed to make of that?
I'm kind of surprised how young Roger is.
I would say that you are so wise beyond your.
Yeah,
so wise beyond your years, Roger.
I'm only 16.
They expected you to be the same age as Aristotle or something like that, and they're just absolutely amazed that you're still in your own body and you're not reincarnated.
Yeah, it's a great nod to the plant-based diet because Roger's actually 217. So
217.
Has anybody ever seen a movie called The Santa Claus with him out of Home Improvement in? When he gets the Santa Claus suit that basically makes him immortal, but he just gets the grey hair and stuff. I'm kind of hoping that's what's happened to Roger, but he's got like a green vegan one. Just like
well, because of the green screen, you can't see the strings. I'm actually right, folks. So thanks so much for the conversation. I think it's quite interesting. Next stop will be the Zoom call tomorrow. And I think just to reiterate what Andy said, this wasn't an attack on anybody. This was just to locate something that had just happened in the general rights welfare type discussion, or well, not even discussion, because it's hardly discussed really, apart from by the rights-based people. And I think, I mean, what I would say as a kind of end statement, really, I suppose, is that what the rights people have always wanted is not to say to the welfarist, you must do animal rights. It's more to do with allowing the rightists the space and their identity to be the rightists. And so if some journalist comes along and wants to speak to an animal rights person, they don't end up talking to Ingrid Newkirk. They end up talking to a rights person, right? But this has always been the problem. The fact that these ideas have always been conflated and confused and intertwined, you can be both at the same time and all that kind of stuff, means that apart from a few years, which again you would have to put to the late 80s, early 90s, but just those few years in the entirety of human history, animal rights as a philosophical idea has never really had much of an airing. And even during those years, the welfarists were still doing their stuff as well. It's not as though the RSPCA and the HSUS and stuff weren't there. And so it's as though we almost like have to try to say, look, we need to see. I've always said to people, if you don't adhere to the philosophy of animal rights, why do you want the name? But that is the most common thing. Most people who don't, like Alex O'Connor said that, our friend, the what was he, Cosmic Skeptic. Seb Alex asked him about had you read, Reagan, and he said I had, but I didn't really agree with it. And he said, but one thing that most people in the animal rights movement who call themselves animal rights are not, he said. And he said they've read Singer, nobody's read Reagan, and so it's always been very difficult to pull these kind of ideas apart because the people who are not rightists nevertheless like the name, and that's always been a problem. And it sounds like a simple thing. If you don't agree with animal rights, don't use the name. But they say, no, I like the name. And that's always been the problem.
Yeah.
Question for you. Do you advise us to sign or not sign? Well, I don't have a great deal of faith in petitions. I mean, we used to say that when there used to be hard copy petitions, they used to end up in the bin. And in fact, we often got told that by the people receiving them, that the first thing they do is shred them. This kind of thing. So I'm not quite sure even if a modern day internet petition has got much kind of gravitas. Even I mean, because at least the people who had to actually get a pen out and sign a piece of paper, that's whereas if you're just doing it and you kind of
I think the only little thing they offer is if it's the UK Gulf one, then once it reaches 100,000 signatures, they kind of are obliged to talk about it in Parliament. But that can be, as I've watched.
Yeah, but who's going to talk about it in
BSL
Parliament?
Petition, yeah. it gets to the state where they go, today, Mr. Speaker, such and such from what's it would like to speak to you about BS, and he goes, no, that's it.
And there's
that's
like
as much as you
4
can get
politicians in
sometimes.
the room.
Yeah, it's no guarantee of
Yeah.
anything, but yeah, there are some obligations if it reaches X amount of signatures.
Could any of you see it actually maybe gaining traction that akin to the battery hens and the gestation crates in America, where you have levels of welfare, as in you have different levels of horse racing, so you might have a better welfare horse race running with a premium attached to it?
I mean, I don't think the industry is big enough to deal with that kind of thing personally, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if, like what we talked about earlier, was kind of one thing. Come to our track. There's no jumps. There's no risks. We've got a great safety record. I could see that happening.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. I think the future I could see from the back of the language that's been used. This is just animal rising. Generally speaking, I think potentially what would end. This is more about the moral movement in the comment section when people disagree with the jumps. I think it's potentially going to still be entry. They'll just take the hedges and the pits away, and it'll just be a loop. They'll just do 2 laps of the loop instead, or
That's
something
what I
like
mean,
that.
yeah. Will the public or will society try and find ways to just make it better?
I'd like to, because obviously I haven't seen tons and tons of video, but if anyone's watching this that was there yesterday, it'd be interesting to know, were the police in attendance with police horses? And if so, did anyone say anything to them? Or is that kind of use acceptable? Because I
didn't see any police horses on any of the footage I've seen.
No, neither did I, in fairness. That's why I was just asking. I haven't seen.
But what about this question from Joanna? People would I mean, I tend not.
I wouldn't tell anyone not to sign it, but I would just give them the same optimism that I would with any petition about any cause ever.
I don't think it's going to cause any harm to sign the petition, is it really? It's going to bring more conversation at a higher level at the end of the day. It's not necessarily what we want. It is a single issue still, but I would still say that it's another kind of, if you will, another seed planted. So if people want to sign the petition, I would still encourage them to do so, but I'll then lead on to another conversation with them.
Whilst this is still quite, in everyone's minds at the moment, I'd say definitely sign it, because if you can get to that 100,000 or whatever it is, whilst it's still in all the newspapers and the government don't care, you've still got X amount of people who are going to do something else.
The problem though, lads, is that it's kind of counter-revolutionary in the sense that we're here to shift the culture. Our target is cultural speciesism. Now a petition doesn't do that. And what a petition kind of does is almost like, say, you've got some type of faith in this system. In fact, there's some interesting sociological work where when people are asked what they want protesters to do, the number one that they like protesters to do is sign petitions. And they think that's the best way of protesting, right? And then when it gets down to stuff that the protesters think is useful, the public tend to be against it. So it's almost like you can flip it over. What the protesters tend to think is useful, the public don't like. And what the protesters think is useless, and most of them say petitions, that's exactly what the petition, So there's a bit of kind of faith in the kind of, there's a petition and this is the official way of doing it. And so I think the kind of, social anarchist in me rankles at that, on that level, I think, a little bit. Because you're almost like saying, I have faith in you, the system, and all I got to do is put my name down and you're going to take notice. Like, yeah, right. So.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I guess it's in the similar sense that a few years ago, I didn't actually vote for anyone. I just went in and did a big cross across the whole ballot. But I wanted to show that's how I feel. The whole system, as far as I'm concerned, is corrupt as shit. But I want to show you that that's how I feel at the very least. At least my name now exists. So I suppose there's that element of it. The other thing that I'm trying to say is, if they are trying to take advantage of this whole animal lover thing and let's get people really fired up, then that petition reaching the threshold and being talked about in Parliament very soon is going to invoke the best possible reaction from those animal lovers, and this dragging on for months and months and months, and most people who have signed it would have forgotten.
Well, I'll tell you what, Andy. If they do that and they have a conversation, we'll get Hansard, and we'll have another show like this, and we'll go through what was said, and you'll be going, "What a load of bollocks."
I'm just.
But at the very least, we'll have another conversation where it's like, well, there's someone else now that knows a little bit about this. Plus, at least then, if that happens, we could, because I mean, I'm looking at hypothetically, if we turned up tomorrow on the Zoom call and said, look, this is what we think, they could go, fuck off, you do something else instead. Whereas if we can go, hang on, you've tried the petition and the government have basically laughed at you, we told you so. We have got a bit that we can say, look, why don't you try this way instead? Whereas until then, we haven't really got anything.
Could you see a hypothetical where the petition does get to government, they do read it, they do look at the unnecessary suffering, they remove the cruelty and welfare aspects out of it and make it a lot better, and then we're in a situation where society and public kind of go, well, yeah, we've reached our targets, we did what we set out to do, so now the horses are running and they're all happy and there's no cruelty.
Well, that's where we rely on Animal Rising to maintain their abolition approach, don't we? Because essentially that's where they're going to get anyway with what they've done with the animal lover thing, isn't it? Whether the petition works or not, the mantra that they've put out is always going to invoke that kind of reaction. So this is exactly what the point of this conversation is. There must be some point where you're going to say, right, we've sucked you in now. This is our real idea, or this is what we actually really want to achieve. Because otherwise, they're going to get that no matter what, whether there's a petition or not. They're only going to get a better one.
I'm just wondering if it would have a negative effect, as in, say, it gets the government, it goes through all this, and then Animal Rights and say, no, that's not what it's about. No, we're trying to, and then people are going, well, you're just asking for more and more and more. You've kind of missed that chance of that first step, that doing it right. I
suppose that's what Roger was talking about, isn't it? Consistency of message, because it's as soon as you are perceived to move the goalposts, then that's when everybody just starts to go, whoa, hang on. That's not what we were talking about. It's like, well, actually, no, I was leading on to this, like, but that's not what we were talking about.
I tell you what, that is really interesting, because a lot of the kind of social psychologists in the movement have always suggested that if you ask for the big ask, you get nothing. And they often put it this way: if you ask for all or nothing, which nobody does really, but if you ask for all or nothing, you'll get nothing. But there is a psychologist called Casey Taft, and I think he's got a book, and it's called I forgot, but I've got it. He says that there's a lot of actual academic research which says that asking for a big ask is better than asking for a small one, because it's seen on that grounds that people recognize you as being honest, you're being straightforward, you're not being a politician about it, you're not giving any hint that there's something else, and they're going, well, what are you really asking for? You know that kind of thing. Because as soon as you get into that kind of level, then the element of trust is gone. Because if you say something and the other person kind of goes, that's not actually what you want, though, is it? You want something else, right? That's not that, psychologically that kind of damages relationship. So yeah, I'm just trying to think of that book title. Sorry, Casey, if you ever watched this. If you'll find it if you go to Facebook, and there's a thing called Vegan Publishers, and you'll find it on there, because that's Casey's site, or it was anyway. Oh. But yeah, Graham, I don't know. I mean, how would they take the cruelty out of? I mean, they'd abolish the fences. They'd all be flat racing. It doesn't stop the training aspect. It doesn't stop the fact that you've got a human being on your back, which itself is supposed to be a problem for horses. I mean, they've done a lot of these things where they've taken X-rays, and you've got the bendy back and all this kind of stuff, right? Which is kind of obvious in a way when you think about it, because they're not built for having weight on their backs. So. But as soon as you get into that world of what does non-cruelty mean, then you're in that messy world. I've always said, for example, that it's very difficult to regulate atrocities, and it's very hard to do that. I mean, because it's such a minefield of trying to define terms in the first place. What is cruelty, and what is acceptable, what's unnecessary, all those kind of terms which come up. Unnecessary suffering, what's that? It's a suffering that is not necessary. So how do you work that out? This is why you've got all that mess when you get into court with it. Because you go and say, oh, this person caused unnecessary suffering, and so the judge asks, well, what's necessary suffering? And that question is code for, well, what do people like this normally do? So if you say this farmer has created unnecessary suffering, the judge says, well, what do farmers normally do? Oh, they pull the teeth out and they do that and all that. But this person has done worse than that. Oh, well, and so, I mean, from our point of view, that's all nonsense, right?
It's almost opening you up to a subjective, like what's your subjective
that's the one. That's
kind of relationship with the wording, isn't it? It's like the unnecessary cruelty. It's like, well, actually, if you're a fair farmer, then actually for you to make a profit, there's a lot of necessary cruelty that needs to happen, and people want to buy that product and wear that product. Therefore, that is necessary. So it's that whole subjective morality point of view from the wording of that text, isn't it?
Just gets you into a very messy place. I mean, in some ways, animal rights has got a simplicity about it, which is we don't use them, and we're not going to get into debates about how we might if we were, to take this into account or to take that into account. We just go, no, just don't use them. So, people, I think we're probably done. We're on for longer than we thought. So, thanks for everybody who's kept with us. It's a terrible thing, I've got no play out to do. I haven't got. I always have a play out. I love those. I haven't got one today, so talk about something to whinge about. Right, people. I'll see you again.
We'll have to sing
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
See you later.